What is one thing that would make you recycle more? Some kind of motive or reward?
Well, we have a plan that can help you learn the benefits of recycling while also give you something in return.
But first, here's a little information about the problem at hand.
As we know, a renewable resource is any natural resource that can replenish itself naturally over time, usually in a human life. And a non-renewable resource is any natural resource from Earth that exists in limited supply and cannot be replaced if it is all used up. Aluminum is a non-renewable resource because there is a certain amount of aluminum on this planet, and once it is all mined, there will never be any more.
To get the aluminum needed to make the cans, you must first take the ore called bauxite and refine it. The most common process of refining aluminum is called the Bayer process. In this process, the bauxite is crushed and mixed with sodium hydroxide. Then it is placed in a high-temperature pressure digester where a reaction occurs. This causes the aluminum oxide and ore resin to dissolve. The oxide evaporates and then condenses. The oxide then crystallizes and enters a new stage. In this process, the aluminum oxide is placed in a cell where a carbon rod causes the aluminum oxide to react with the carbon monoxide, producing carbon dioxide and aluminum. The aluminum is made into an alloy for shipping.
The ore is then made into sheet metal and shipped to a manufacturing plant where it is then made into cans. The sheet metal first goes into a press that forms shallow cups. The cups are then go to a different machine where it's pressed again to make the sides thinner and taller. Shortly after, the bottom is arched for strength, the rough sides are trimmed, and the can is cleaned. They paint the outside of the can, then bake it, then coat the inside of the pan, and bake it again.
Fun fact, recycling aluminum requires only 5% of the energy it would have taken to make the aluminum from ore that comes from the ground.
Recycling aluminum would keep the Earth's habitats from being destroyed by mining equipment by lowering the need for bauxite.
Although recycling is good, there are pollutants produced during the processes that possess environmental concerns. Things like dioxide, hydrogen chloride, and particulate matter. Dioxides can accumulate in fish and fatty foods and affect brain development and hormone systems. Hydrogen chloride is corrosive to the eyes and skin. Particulate matter is linked to asthma and other respiratory problems.
The aluminum refining process also produces harmful things like this material called dross. If it is not disposed of correctly, then it can cause health problems and environmental concerns. There is also a thing called salt cake. This is when the dross is melted under salt and can be very, very dangerous when it comes into contact with water.
The cost of producing the aluminum cans is $70 for every 1,000 cans, and since about 34 cans make up 1 pound, it costs about $2.34 per pound. The cost for making plastic bottles at least 83 to 85 cents per pound. When you're measuring the cost of making the plastic bottles, it goes by the weight of the pellets. So know that the U.S. produces about 29 billion plastic bottles a year. You need to know that 34 pounds of pellets will make 220 bottles. That means using the scenario, it is cheaper to make the plastic bottles.
So when comparing recycling cost of aluminum cans to recycling cost of plastic bottles, you need to know that the totals are calculated according to price per pound. When you're talking about the aluminum cans, the recycling factory, West Seattle Recycling, does things according to the amount of pounds in material. If you have a load that is under 25 pounds, then it costs 75 cents per pound. When you're talking about plastic bottles, it's a bit of the same process. They take plastic bottles and weigh them, and it costs them 58 to 66 cents per pound. Unlike producing cans, it's cheaper when recycling them.
When producing aluminum cans, the CO2 emissions come out to 9.2 pounds of CO2 per pound of aluminum. When you compare that to plastic bottles, that puts out 0.15 pounds of CO2 when making a 12-ounce bottle that weighs 0.1 of a pound. And this comes out to 2.3 pounds of plastic, making plastic better for the environment. The mean amount of trash is 7.3 grams. It is hard to find a value that fits our data because there is very little trend, but with the median being 0 and the range being 72.9, the one that best fits is the mean.
Now on to our graphs. The first is a box plot graph, and as you can see, the median is 0. And there is one outlier at 72.9, but the majority of the values are between 0 and 14. The histogram shows that there are a lot of people that throw away between 0 and 5 grams of aluminum and tin. But also it shows that there are a lot of people that throw away between 5 and 35 grams. Just like the box plot, there is one outlier at 72.
Here's something to think about. In a year, everyone in the entire school will have produced 433,688.955 grams of aluminum, which comes out to be about 960 pounds.
This is the equivalent of about 3 county fair prize-winning pigs.
Now onto the part where we tell you what can be done.
If you live in a household that goes through a lot of cans, instead of just discarding them or recycling them the normal way, you can take them to a recycling center. The way you do this is you just crush the can, like so, and gather them in like a bag or something, and then take them to the recycling center where you just take them and give it to them.
And what the recycling center does is they'll actually take them directly to the recycling plant where they'll melt them down and make them into aluminum rolls again.
There's one really good upside to all this. Whenever you take them to the recycling center, they'll pay you for recycling. And who doesn't like money?
Who doesn't like money indeed?
Mm-hmm.